I call on Tom Cuniff for the report on this ballot.
The fifth ballot for presiding bishop is complete. May we see the results, please. There were 799 valid ballots cast. 400 were needed to elect. The Reverend Yehiel Curry, 562. The Reverend Kevin Strickland, 237.
There is an election. Bishop Curry, will you come up and address the assembly? Whoop, don't go away. There we are. On the basis of this report and the decision of this assembly, Yehiel Curry hereby declared duly elected to a 6-year term commencing on the first day of the 3rd month after the election as presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
I want to do 2 things first. Family is important to me. I mentioned them in my earlier address because while I take my work seriously, I also take my first ministry seriously, and that is the ministry of my family. Amen. So I can't tell from here, but we came in early because our family had birthdays right before this convention, and we wanted to do both, and my wife wasn't feeling well, so I need to see if she's at least in the room. Do we know? Okay. Amen. I want to thank you, LaShonda, for in many ways sharing me with ministry, and I just want you to know I really appreciate it. Second thing I want to do before I'll say just a few words is many of you have asked about my limping. And I needed to know if my wife was in the room to see what kind of story I would share. So unfortunately, during COVID, I fell in love with golf. I'm not really good at it, but you should know that on July 7th, my wife was taking a week trip to a camp called SIMSA, and I took her to the bus, and I realized that that day I didn't have any duties, and I had cleared some days on my schedule and got excited and played 38 holes of golf in one day. Apparently, I hit my foot with a club. But to ensure that it wasn't broken, I played 18 holes the next day. And then 18 that Tuesday. And I was sharing with my wife what happened, and she said, well, I hope you learned your lesson. I said, I did. Throw away the 5 hybrid and use the 5 iron. I said this in 2019 to the Metropolitan Chicago Senate. I'll say it to you now. I'm what a return on your investment looks like. Even if you don't realize it, every time we gave our benevolence to the church, I was just a guy sitting in the pew, had never really learned the language of discernment. I just knew I had this feeling. So when I was a teacher, I was still trying to figure out what this feeling was, and I didn't get it there. And then I became a social worker, and I didn't feel it there. I went in business for myself. I didn't feel it there. It wasn't until I was in the church that I said, I could do this for the rest of my life. And someone said to me, that's called discernment. So I started attending this synodically authorized worshiping community called Shekinah Chapel. And then and perhaps I'm out there in one of you. I never saw myself as good enough, and so for 2 years I said no. And finally said yes to becoming a lay mission developer. And when I said yes, your support, this church support of that ministry meant everything. And so if you want to know what you give for your investment, thank you, Metropolitan Chicago Senate.